Welcome to Let's Create the Revolution Together, a podcast about creating new ways to embody ourselves as human. If you're here, you're probably well aware of all the shifts that are happening on our planet. Maybe you go with the flow with those changes, or maybe you're struggling to find who you truly are. Either way, this space right here is for you. My name is Marigold Era. I'm an Ayurvedic wellness coach, a spiritual life coach, and a podcaster. I am here to guide you through this reality that we can call the Earth School. I strongly believe that we are here to create new ways to show up as individual and as collective, and that every experience that we encounter is an opportunity to grow and evolve. So grab yourself something to drink, make yourself comfortable, and let's jump right into the next episode. Today on Let's Create the Revolution Together, you're going to meet Divine Feminine Alicia Marie. She's all about spiritual empowerment. She's a self-love hype woman, a rainbow bridge, and a truth teller. She's here to empower people to make decisions that are better suited for what they are here to do, what they're destined to be, rather than making decisions surrounding their emotional attachment. She's also helping kids to reground within their own bodies by teaching unique breath work designed specifically for them, along with art activities that support their true authentic expression. I have to say, as an unschooling mother, I really, really love that. So she's super passionate about connection and teaching the collective how to transform their lives through connecting with one another. She is committed to shifting the collective consciousness to a higher state of awareness and ultimately bringing peace, confidence, and an entirely new reality to live it up into. So here she is. Alicia Marie. All right.
Wow, that was quite the introduction. I almost started crying. I'm like, oh my gosh, is she talking about me?
Yes, I am.
What a journey to get here, man.
I know, right? Yeah, so let's talk about that journey. I remember you told me that in 2013, like you stopped drinking, and like let's start there. Like, how bad was the drinking? What brought you to drinking?
Yeah, I started drinking alcohol probably around 14 years old. I didn't understand why I was really at the time, but at the time I was using it as an escape mechanism. I was dealing with a lot in my home life. I was moving from Las Vegas to a really small town. And, I was on the dance team in Las Vegas. I had a really promising career in Las Vegas in dance. Specifically, dance was my whole heart. Oh. And so when my parents decided to move, it was very traumatizing because that kind of move, that kind of change in dynamic, that kind of change in culture is, very important to discuss with the family, with the children. And that's just wasn't the case. It was just a very light conversation. My father is the youngest boy of a military family, so everything he says goes. And not that he was, everything that happened was just like, we're doing this.
Right.
And my mother is, she had a lot of emotional damages growing up. So she created a narcissistic barrier which understanding her journey, I totally get, but given the covert narcissist and the father who was emotionally absent, created a beautiful recipe for me to begin drinking. And alcoholism ran in my family. My grandfather was an alcoholic. So I kind of just started drinking, and I started, sneaking out of my house, drinking. And so when we moved to Idaho, It was very interesting. We go from,
Right.
it was, and we're not talking like the capital. We're talking like the town is Coeur d'Alene, so it was 2 hours away from Canada. So that's how far up we went. I didn't even know Idaho was the state above Nevada. That's how much I wasn't aware of where Idaho was. So when we get to Idaho, it's the first day of school. It's all cloudy and foggy.
Right.
Never growing up in the desert, there's never fog. So I'm thinking the apocalypse is here. Like the world is ending.
Right.
So the neighbor kid across the street took me and my sister to school on our first day, and we drove up to the parking lot, and he looks at me for some reason and he goes, "If you ever want drugs, you go to that guy." And I went to that guy. That guy's now my son's father. So I did. I went to that guy and I explored all different kinds of escapes. And I had experienced Idaho just for a couple of years, then graduated, moved to Las Vegas, and began my venture back home in Vegas without a plan. I wouldn't recommend anybody move to Las Vegas without any plan. I moved in with my uncle and, got this wild idea that I think it would be awesome to be an exotic dancer. So, and it's because like I had grown, my father he had grown up my whole life having women posted in the garage, having, obviously not hiding porn at all.
Right.
He just loved sex, loved women. And at a certain point, he just didn't hide it anymore. And, so being, the oldest, I thought that that's what love is sex. And so I started dancing, and I began to feel what it feels like to that kind of like control, and this is where the unhealthy kind of masculine comes in within me, because, I'm thinking that that's love. I'm thinking that's the only way that men express themselves is through sex. And so I learned a lot about how to be sexual, how to be sexy in all the wrong ways, right? I would never, not to knock on, anybody who's an exotic dancer, that's your career, that's your lifeline. I totally understand. But if you're in that lifeline, you understand that it's a whole other world. And for me, I wouldn't my experience on anybody. It was probably it wasn't even my bottom, but it was probably one of the darker times in my life, because I had also started, dealing drugs through the club, getting really into all different kinds of spaces and places that I didn't belong. But I learned a lot about the darkness as far as sex goes. And I got hands-on experience about what those people experience. I had a lot of, I saw like, it's The Secret, right? And I started to understand and see like how shame can create like this massive bubble around people of secrets.
Right.
And I got to live in those secrets. I got to see married men come in and hide from their wives and their families. They live a whole other life out there, but inside the club, they become somebody else. And that's who they really are. They're just afraid to express it or afraid to talk about their issues, right?
Right.
So, having experienced that, I got into my life ended up becoming really dark. And so I was forced to move back to Idaho, which I wasn't excited about. But I did. And I moved back in with my parents because I had gotten pregnant by somebody in Vegas. And so I moved back in with my parents, and 2 weeks later I had a miscarriage. So you want to talk about divine intervention? That's like a really big key piece of divine intervention, right?
Right.
Now living in a place where, I don't really want to be. And I start working as a caregiver, taking care of the elderly. And that's one of the more rewarding jobs I've ever had, learning about the wisdom that happens, learning about the elderly that come to like have lived their entire lives, and they have all this wisdom and lessons. And it was really, really cool. But when I moved back to Idaho, I was drinking very heavily. I was drinking on the job as a caregiver. I was drinking day and night. I got involved with, so because what I learned at the strip club, I used what I had to try to date the owner of this caregiving facility, the owner's son, right? because that's all that I knew. So I started dating him. I ended up getting a raise because that was my only intention. And, this guy was kind of crazy. After like a couple weeks, I was like, okay, well, bye. And I didn't realize that he was also stalking me at the same time. And still drinking, when we go out and have a drink, we're not thinking about the entire reality around us. I totally wasn't. I was heavily just involved in my life, myself, my drinking. People would tell me, yo, you get a bit crazy when you drink. I'm like, you just can't handle me. So I went out for a fake 21st birthday. It was my 20th birthday. But I went out for a fake 21st birthday. And, no one cards you when you're like, I'm 21. And especially in a small town like that, they're like, all right, come on in. And then that night, I blacked out. I don't know where I went or who I was with, but that night I ended up being gang raped by the man who was stalking me and also whoever else was there. I really couldn't tell you.
Wow.
And it was, I tried to tell my roommate, but there's so much shame. It's like, I was the one that was drunk. I was the one that was drinking. That's all I could think about. I wasn't thinking about anybody taking advantage of the situation because my mother is you got yourself into situations. So everything was always my fault. If you have even when I got pregnant with my son, she would always tell me, well, you spread your legs. It's so vile the way that she would communicate. And so I was in my program, right? To talk about it because it's a program that was, deep seated in me because of my program and the conversations my mother would have with me about my choices and how, it made me feel like everything was my fault. This felt like my fault.
Yeah.
So I only told, my roommate, I was really upset and then I never talked about it. Okay. And then I was working at Hooters as a bartender, and there was the Hooters bikini contest, and I'm of course bartending. I sneak drinks. I'm telling you, I drink every single day, all the time. It's free alcohol. I'm a bartender. I could just drop it in a plastic cup, and it looks like soda.
Yeah.
These are really, when you're an alcoholic, you find unique ways to hide it, and so I went to the Hooters bikini contest, competed in that, and my stomach was weird and I didn't understand. And I went to the doctor and I found out that I was pregnant. And I hadn't been with anybody since that had happened to me. And the week prior to that, I was with my drug dealer. So that happened. And then I was gang raped, and then I wasn't sexually active at all with anybody. And so when I found out I was pregnant, it was kind of like, oh shit.
Right.
Gotta make a decision, right? Am I going to stick around and do this, or am I going to try to figure this out? And so I went to Planned Parenthood and I tried to make a decision for myself. And in Washington State at the time, the cutoff was 13 weeks, and I was 13 weeks and 4 days. So I ended up going through my whole pregnancy by myself. That was the only time I'd stopped drinking, was when I found out I was pregnant. And then I had stopped, and I got a little bit of clarity. I got a little clarity about my life. I started to get my life put together, and then my son was born. It ended up being my drug dealer's child, for the lesser of two evils. And but I couldn't wait to drink again.
Yeah.
I remember bringing my newborn baby down to the DMV to get my 21 older, my new ID, because I turned 21.
Yeah.
And I was more focused on that. And then, after that experience, I had met somebody, and I got married to him as an escape. So when I go into relationships, it's like, and it's a little bit of an escape for me because I don't have to take full responsibility of my own emotional damages.
Yeah.
What I realized I was doing, at the time I didn't understand that, but I was only 21 years old. And so I'm in a relationship with this person and married, and he ends up, because I thought he was Prince Charming because he didn't drink and didn't do drugs. And I'm like, wow, I don't know anybody that doesn't do that. And he ended up being extremely controlling. By the end of that marriage, I was confined to one room with a landline. I wasn't allowed to have a cell phone, wasn't allowed to have social media, I had to delete my social media, wasn't allowed to talk to my friends, was allowed to talk to my family.
Wow.
And still raising my son. And my son was with me. And so, you know, in the middle of the night, I escaped. I brought my son over to his grandparents' house and I ran away home to Vegas. And on the plane, I was really scared to tell him that I had left him, and he was, you know, screaming. I thought he was going to kill me. And after talking to a counselor, you know, in therapy, especially when, you know, someone specializes in domestic violence, there's this chart that, you know, you talk about the processes that you're in,
right?
How serious it is. I was in such a delusional state. The next step would have been like death for me. He was so, it was really bad.
Right.
So I was lucky enough to escape that environment. But I went to Vegas without a plan again, you know, came here, just partied, and then went back to Idaho with all my problems still rearing their ugly head. And so I did what I do best. I get jobs at bars, and I start bartending, start living with friends, start couch hopping with my son, because my son couldn't be around his dad because his dad was a severe drug addict. So the lesser of two evils, the alcoholic. It's like, at least I was working and making money and able to buy diapers and like all this stuff. And so, you know, in 2013, I got my second DUI. You know, my first one was kind of a wild story. I totally totaled my vehicle. It was pretty funny. Yeah, that's a whole other thing. But my second DUI, you know, when you're in alcohol and you're drinking alcohol, there's a reason why they call it spirits, for a reason, okay? Because it's a man-made product and you are ingesting like this contract with this alcohol. Whether you think you're going out to have fun or not, you know, whether you're not an alcoholic or not, you're making an agreement with this, that you are willing to give up your free will, basically, and you're going to behave in a manner that isn't in alignment with who you really are. And so that's exactly what I did. And when you kind of drink a lot of alcohol, I became very God complexy. I was egocentric. I knew I had this high horse. Like, there's no way I'm going to get another DUI. Like I didn't know down my mind. It's like, I already went through that life experience. There's no way I'm going to get another one. And I did. And it was pretty wild. And so I go to jail for my second DUI, and I'm sitting in a concrete room on suicide watch with 4 walls and a drain to piss in. And it's like, you know, 2 a.m, and all I'm left with was my drunken thoughts. And all of a sudden I hear this audible voice. It was the first time I heard a voice that wasn't mine, that was from the spirit world. And it was from my grandpa. My grandpa had passed away a couple of years prior to that. And he told me, he's like, you need to go to 90 meetings in 90 days, which is what, you know, kind of like AA is.
Right.
And I was like, what? 1, 2, you know, like, I'm like, whoa. I'm like, I am losing it now. I'm totally losing it. But it hit me. It hit me pretty hard. And I got picked up. My son's father actually bailed me out of jail. And I got out of jail and I went back to my parents' house, and I kind of sat alone with my thoughts, and there was a half drinking beer next to my dresser. And usually for me, it didn't really matter if it was warm, if it was days old, if it was Listerine, if it had alcohol in it, I for sure drank it. For like, I had no discrimination. And so I remember like grabbing the beer, like after I got out of jail, and I went to go put it up to my mouth, and I was like, screamed, and I was like, fuck you. And I squoze it really hard, and I threw it, and I went right to a meeting. And I haven't had a drink of alcohol since. And going into that environment in these meetings was the first time I actually experienced the true, authentic feeling of unconditional love. I walk in very broken, you know, in society, I'm just trash, thrown away, just the next stripper that's an alcoholic that doesn't have her life together. And, but these people were like, wow, we're happy you're here. And I'm like, wow, I've never heard that before, you know? And they showed me this unconditional love feeling that I'd never felt. And so I kept coming back to those because that felt good to me, you know,
Yeah.
and whether it made sense to me or not, it was different than what I was doing. It felt different than what I was doing. And it certainly felt like I was on the right track, even though I didn't understand.
Yeah.
And that's one thing about this journey is like, even if you're not understanding where you're going or where the universe is taking you, it's up to us to exercise our free will to just try something different.
Yes.
And that's what I did. I was totally powerless, and I knew that my life was crazy and I couldn't stop drinking, and these people knew how to stop. So, you know, in that environment, I met a man and a woman who I feel as if now they're like my soul parents. Definitely connected on a very, very deep level. But on the outside, you know, I'm Miss Preppy, and they are hardcore, like motorcycle riders, tatted up. He's 60 something with a beard and loves guns and totally conservative. His wife is like 5 foot, pixie haircut, tattoos, wearing all leather. And they're like, hey, you know, I almost started to talk to them because I was afraid of them. You know, it ended up being the best decision that I ever made, because not only did they begin to teach me the truth about my addiction at the time, they also started to teach me about the spiritual world, and in a way that I hadn't heard it before. Now, I had grown up Christian, right? My dad was on the board of church. My mom was in the children's ministry. I went to church 4 times a week. And never had I ever felt or experienced the kind of love that came from these two people in my entire life. So already my belief system is kind of like, what's going on here? Because these two people, according to society, are witches. And my mom and dad said that those people go to hell and those people are evil and those people are the devil. But they're the ones that are teaching me more about my life and more about myself and giving me the freedom of expression without judgment. And my parents never did that. There's always judgment tied to it, or I'm doing something wrong, or I need to do this, or I need to do that. They just let me be who I was.
Right.
They didn't like my behavior, but they weren't afraid to call it out in love, right? I remember one time Anthony was my son, he was 4 years old, and he was like running around, you know, like, and I'm like, Anthony, stop running around. Like, I yelled at him. And her name was Yvette. She looks at me dead in the face and she's like, is that the kind of mother you want to be? And she didn't have to yell. She didn't have to degrade me. She just called out the truth. And I heard it in my heart, right? And then I started to realize the benefits of direct truth with love. And because I was in such a space of willingness, I was willing to hear it because my life had been so shit. I knew this woman and respected her. And so I knew for a fact she wouldn't tell me this if she didn't love me. So they began to teach me about like cards, and they taught me, he started, you know, he was a druid, and he started to talk about his belief systems. And I didn't relate to all of it, but I found it very interesting that somebody could not be drinking for 30 plus years and have this spirituality ideal that worked for them, that was totally different than what I had been taught my whole life. I've just found it so interesting. And that's what makes those recovery groups so interesting, because they are all different kinds of people from all different kinds of walks of life with all different kinds of belief, yet they all come together as one.
Right.
And, I think that's where we're all at on the planet right now as well. So my fairy friend Yvette, that was her name. She got diagnosed with leukemia and breast cancer, and she ended up passing away. And that was the first, you know, besides my grandpa, that was the first serious death that I experienced. And it was really hard, but I did it without drinking. I did it without using anything. I just allowed myself to process the grief. And it was really beautifully healing. And again, like, that's the first time that's something different. That's a different decision that I made, instead of like running to the bottle. Or running to somebody else, or running to escape through other people. It's just like I was forced to sit in that. And although it was difficult, it was it was easier to let her go and allow her to fly free and be happy. Of course, she passed away on the first full moon on Christmas in 30 years. I mean, oh yeah, it's time now. I'm making my exit. And so, you know, the recovery group, you know, that those people really helped me. They were the first kind of pinpoint of unconditional love, and it allowed me to explore myself further. But I was still escaping via relationships. I started to escape really in relationships, and that's one thing that I found is like, just because I find one addiction and it's subsided, that doesn't mean I don't have many, because I have lots of different emotional damages that I'm trying to console rather than turning to the divine.
Yes.
And so I start, you know, dating, and you know, I got really involved with somebody who also had a severe porn addiction like my father. And it was so traumatizing because I didn't understand in the moment, like, you know, because it's like, well, I'm not good enough. And like, it's just like this whole repetitive thing. It's like, people don't understand when you're in a relationship with somebody with a severe porn addiction, the other person is so left out of their own emotional body. They don't have the ability to be honest and be truthful. You know, I became like an FBI agent. Like, I would search everything, and I got overly involved and very codependent, you know. All of those behaviors were rearing right in front of my face. But I knew in my heart I really wanted to move back to Vegas. Like, there was just something calling me back home, and Idaho just wasn't it. It's like, it's just like, you know, I just had grown up, you know, that all these beautiful people around me, all these older people around me, protecting me, allowing me to kind of start my spiritual journey.
Yes.
So then in January 2018, after I'd broken up with my boyfriend at the time, and keep in mind, as I go through all this, I'm going through custody battles. Like, like, I'm knee deep in lawyers and court. And because my child, you know, I wasn't afraid, as I, you know, got sober, I wasn't afraid to speak my truth even more and more and more.
Yes.
And because of that, I wasn't willing to participate in my son's father's addiction. I wasn't willing to watch him die. So I would be the only one in his entire life that would always call him out, like, yo, you're using, yo, you're doing this, go take a drug test. You're not, because I didn't want Anthony around it at all. I didn't want my son around it at all. If I had such a passion, like, I'm like, this is so wrong. Because I had stopped drinking, and I was able to get a little bit of clarity in my mind, where I was able to feel comfortable in speaking my truth. And if you want to start speaking your truth, just get involved in a custody battle. Okay. And, you know, and then in a smaller town with people who had been born and raised there, like, there's been never no repercussions still to this day that have been that serious for the amount of damage that has gone on through his addiction. And so I've been the only one, and going through courts and going through this, getting protection orders, also getting sober, also trying to learn about myself. Well, you know, it's like just every single day putting one foot in front of the other, no matter what, because I knew in my heart, like, I had this fire, this passion. I knew there's more. I know there's more. And I didn't really know what was igniting it even more, but it just like kept on. And finally, I got this pull to move back to Vegas in January 2018. I came down to visit my family, and I had this huge spiritual awakening. I just dropped to my knees and start bawling. And I'm like, yo, like, I know I'm supposed to be here. And it's just like, yes, you're supposed to be here. Get it started. And I was like, oh my God, what a daunting task. Because now I got to go back to court, and I got to ask his dad if it's okay. And it's never going to be okay, because people have control issues. And, you know, there's it. And it wasn't just him, it was his whole entire family. We're talking, you know, Italian Catholics, so many, you know. It was literally like, I felt like, you know, for lack of a better story, like David and Goliath. Like, I had this against me, you know. My outside reality was telling me no. But I kept the conscious contact with, and at the time I didn't call it the divine or anything. I just said something bigger than myself. I would just say, yo, I know you're out there and you see what I'm doing. I'm gonna need your help. You know, I had such a hard time with the word God because of church. I had such a hard time with the divine. I had a hard time believing that there was this thing out there, but it actually took like 3 years for me to start saying like, okay, something bigger than myself, because for a while I was just calling my God was my group around me.
Right.
I had such a negative connotation on the word. So I kind of just, like started talking and asking, and I'd cry and I'd be like, yo, okay, what's my next step? What am I supposed to do? And I just start doing it. And it was so daunting. If you do, and I'm 25 or 27. I'm 27.
Right.
I have like a 7-year-old kid.
Yeah.
And I'm working in a corporate job. I'm working a corporate job in collections. It was actually my favorite corporate job I've ever had. They taught me a lot. I got mentored a lot. I was open to learning and understanding. And one thing about when you're learning and trying to understand, you're going to get triggered. People are going to push your buttons because they're meant to challenge your facade.
Yes.
They're meant to challenge the wall you put up. And when you're talking to something bigger than yourself, whether you know it or not, you're going to get synchronicities in your life if we're paying attention. And that's what happened with this corporate job, man. They taught me and molded me on how to like be an appropriate person, and how to be professional, and how to be politically correct sometimes, and how to be, not harsh. I was so like, all the time. At my meetings, they used to call me the caged tiger because I was so angry. So then I move, I go through this whole thing, and I move, and I get to Vegas, and I get promised a job when I get here, and the job falls through. So now I'm living back home, and I don't have contact with all the people I've contact with, just my family. And I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. So then I just start working another corporate job because that's what they say you're supposed to do. And I'm barely making enough money to get by, but I'm making enough money to get by. Somehow when you're on the right track and you're doing the right thing, even though your bank account might say -30, you're going to pay rent.
Yes.
Regardless. And that is what's happened. I've had to live just constantly by this like faith. And it was in that working that job that I realized I don't really want to be working for people. I had a hard time following the leader because I'm a very deep person, and because of all the lessons I had learned, it didn't make any sense for me to kind of sign a contract with somebody that isn't even aware or isn't even conscious.
Yeah.
My boss was like so out of the loop, and it was just a job for everybody, and it felt so unfulfilling. So when the shutdown happened, when COVID happened, I was in a relationship with this beautiful woman, and she kind of encouraged me to like quit my job, and that she would be here to back me up. And I just started doing what I loved, and I was personal training. When I was working at this corporate job, I was driving, like I would leave my corporate job, go teach a class, and come back because I was so passionate about fitness. And, because my family has terrible eating habits. Everybody eats frozen food or goes and buys fast food or whatever. And it was like, I don't want to live like that. So I started teaching classes and was doing boxing, and I found an escape through boxing because boxing is very healing. It's a really good way to release masculine energy. It's a really good way to release anger. It's a really good way. I found a huge passion in that. So I was teaching that as well. And I ended up being able to quit my corporate job during the shutdown, and started personal training. I was doing live streams. I was training people in the park for free. Was just trying to live it out, and it got built up and got built up and built up, and people began to trust me. And it was the first time in my entire life that I felt seen for kind of who I was.
Right. Something closer.
Yeah, people were paying me to help them with their health. And that was like mind-boggling to me because I'm the ex-stripper and the alcoholic, and now people are like, please help us with your health, with our health. And I'm like, a shift in the narrative, right? It's because there's always breadcrumbs that are left for us. There's always breadcrumbs that are left in this direction or that direction. Are you going to make the same decision over here, or are you just going to try something a little bit different? And I wasn't planning on getting into the fitness industry when I moved to Vegas, but it just happened because I loved working out in Idaho. And I'm like, well, maybe I can just try this. And this gym kind of took a chance on me before I even got certified in anything. And it was divinely aligned for sure. So I'm training my clients, and then I start to see that, you know, people would lose weight, but they had these problems. You know, as a personal trainer, you don't mean to, but you become their counselor a little bit. And then I start to see that people were losing the weight, but then they were putting it back on because they weren't dealing with their emotional wounds. They weren't dealing with the things that got them there in the first place.
Right.
And so I started to ask questions. When you ask questions in an environment that doesn't really want to be asked questions of, people push you out of the job. And that's what happened at this boxing place. I got pushed out because I was asking questions after the shutdown. You know, after the shutdown, it's like you know, for me, I had this epiphany about people who have been missing a lot of like care and love and friendship and kindness. We got away from walking. We got away from developing relationships that are healthy. We got away from, like, if you were paying attention, you really saw the true serious nature of the world, what the pulse of the world really was.
Yeah.
And so I started to develop a passion to try to help people in that way. But I was also going through what I was going through in my relationship at home. So I'm like building my personal training business. I'm going through really dark times with my ex-girlfriend at the time, with my girlfriend at the time. I get custody of my niece because my sister's going through it. And my son had just come from Idaho, and his father didn't treat him very well. So now I've got all this stuff like surrounding my reality. And I'm like, what's going on, dude? Like, how is it so heavy? Like every single thing in my life was questioned, all of it.
Yeah.
Every aspect of my life was questioned, and the true serious nature of my soul came through. And I had to start making decisions that were better for me. And it was the kind of the first time I started to make decisions that were best for myself. I left that relationship. I I started to develop a friendship with somebody who saw me for who I was. And it was a man, right? I hadn't been comfortable with men in my life. I'd gone through a lot of sexual trauma, like a lot of father wounds. And, you know, we don't realize it as women, but when we go through a lot of, you know, and a lot of us go through sexual trauma, whether it's as a child, which I experienced as well, or whether it's an adult, or whether it's the fact that, you know, you get hit on all the time because men just want to take from you, or whatever the case may be. Women have, you know, it's kind of been created in society that women are objects. And that's a lot. It's, you know, it's a lot. And that's what we talk about. Start talking about like your ancestral line, because as you start to heal yourself, you begin to see the pain that has been passed down over and over and over and over. That's also heavy.
Yes.
So when we talk about dark night of the soul, you're literally talking about being willing to look at every single aspect of your life, not just in the physical, but the spirit realm as well. You know, we can scroll on Instagram and look at all these fun quotes, but how did somebody get there to speak that profound?
Right.
And it is because of going through these heavy trials. You know, I was in a relationship with this woman that I thought I was going to be with forever. I thought I found the one. And it ended up completely falling apart because I was seeking truth. So the facade fell apart. And when you go on the path to want to seek truth, it's like a constant state of willingness to constantly see.
Yeah. And
so, you know, now I'm kind of leaving this relationship, and it was really heartbreaking. It's still like to me, it's like the most tragic love story of my whole life. Like it was an amazing relationship, and it just turned into a massive lesson. And so I was kind of I was leaving that relationship. I'm realizing my own identity and what I really deserve, and actually what emotional wounds are coming up even more for me, because her emotional damages were reflecting to me all the things that I had not healed yet. And so I had to be willing to stand for myself. And I did. And that's another thing is like a lot of people are in relationships and they don't think they can leave because it's too scary to leave. And when I tell you I left without a plan, I left without a plan. I was running and operating my own business. I was working at another gym, and I was also very reliant on her financially. So here I am, I'm trying to leave in the middle of like the highest, like it, the rental agreements around here are just incredible. And so when I say I had the world, like here we are again. I'm choosing myself, and I want to leave this relationship. And how is the universe going to honor that?
Right.
My bank account wasn't telling me that I could afford to live on my own. The whole world was, kind of shunning anytime I would ask a question. It was very hard to manage through. But the one thing I will say is I continue to stay true to myself. I continue to stay true to what felt good inside of me, regardless of what was going on. And that's when the universe brought me someone who was literally an exact replica of me. Same sun rising. His name was Noah. And he reflected back to me everything that I forgot about myself, right? The fun, the playfulness, the excitement, the joy, the little childlike nature. He helped me get back into that part of myself. So when I left my ex-girlfriend, I couldn't find anywhere to live. And all of a sudden this place came up to sublease for 8 months. And I was like, all right, awesome. So I moved in there with my son. It was a 1-bedroom apartment. And you got to be willing to go to those spaces if you're trying to grow. This isn't lifestyles of the rich and famous. It's not all glitz and glam. It's trying, and it does require, and the more I continue to be like, no, like I know I'm on the right path. No, like I didn't listen to my outside reality at all. The more that answers came through, the more that opportunity came through, the more I started to see, feel, hear, taste, touch the truth. And at this time now, I'm starting to really heal even more sexual trauma wounds. I went through 50-hour training with a violence prevention center here in Las Vegas, and it was very deep. And I didn't realize I would get triggered even more into more memories. And it's because I was in a space of willingness always, that I was willing to see, because everything that comes up is still past. Like it had already happened. I have to accept things as they are, to accept the truth as it is, right? And so, I go through all this, and I'm healing all this stuff while also training people, while also doing side gigs. So then I started booking gigs for myself. I'm like, I'm going to go dance. I'm going to go do go-go dancing. I'm going to go model over here. Because I felt so scared to do it, because I didn't feel like it was what I should be doing. I just started doing it. I stepped into the fear anyway. And I ended up meeting amazing people and connections and growing and developing still. And but I'm really grateful for the masculine that the divine brought into my life, and was that kind of safe container. And I'm grateful for that experience, because it showed me what a healthy masculine is supposed to look like. I had such negative beliefs about men that it was like I got shown, like, look, this is how a man in his power really is. And they don't get mad at women when they're emotional. They just hold the container. They're not judging their emotions. They just want to make sure that they're able to process them healthily. There's no pressure. It's just, and that's why I love the masculine and feminine balance so much, because when both are in their true power, it's such a beautiful experience.
Right.
And and this can be friends, this can be a husband, this can be a spouse, or whatever. This can be a cousin. Like if you have a masculine around you that's in their true masculine power, you can feel that without them even speaking. And the ones I have in my life now that are my friends, it's an honor to talk to them, because it feels so safe. That's the biggest thing about the masculine is, like, and women, right? I've never felt safe around men. I've always felt the need to control my situation all the time. And so this experience with Noah was beautiful. And then he helped me also with my son, because I was healing these terrible wounds. I wasn't able to be emotionally present with my son as much. So he helped me with him, and he helped him kind of grow into a really good, he taught him like the little man things that I didn't really know, And so then I have to move out of the 1-bedroom apartment, and I'm still in the same situation. You know, I'm like, I'm not good at money or like, but here we go, universe. I got to move. And I know that I'm on the right path, and you keep telling me. So here we go. I start applying. I'm talking 70 places. No. And if you can imagine, that's scary, right? Here's your home,
Yes.
and now you're trying to move somewhere, and you know that it's going to come up, but you just don't know when. And 2 days before I was supposed to move out of that 1-bedroom apartment, I got the beautiful condo I live in now.
Nice.
And that was a couple years ago, and it was just such a profound experience for me, because it showed, you know, it was like the divine showed me, as long as I remain present, and as long as I remain gratitude, and as long as I remain having faith that it will work out for me, no matter what the world is telling me, then it will happen. So I move in here, and Noah moved in with us. He actually, you know, we developed a really close relationship, and so we moved in here May, and then June he died in a motorcycle accident. And if you want to talk, so, you know, I'd already experienced some death before, right? But when you have somebody that is that close to your reality, and you have the experiences that you have, and it took you all the way till now to open up your heart space to somebody, like really authentically, not hiding pieces of yourself. You are who you are. It was very traumatizing. And in fact, that day ever since then, I have been well aware that this earth is not all. And ever since then, I've been well aware that there is an entire spirit world going on around us. And ever since then, I've realized that death is not real, actually. You know, like the physical body goes away when it's time. And that was one thing I had to accept, is like, you know, people don't leave the earth until it's their time.
Yes.
At all. And that's hard to accept, because when someone dies in such a traumatic way, it's like, wow, how is that supposed to be the story? You know?
Yeah.
But knowing that was a lot to accept. It's like his purpose was to get me back on track. His purpose was to help me and my son kind of get back to where we were meant to be, because I'd been in such a deep hole in my dark night of the soul.
Right.
You know, he's like definitely an angel. And ever since then, that's all I had just been trying to discover the ethers. I've been trying to discover the spirit world. I've been trying to stay in meditation. I've been trying to talk to the universe. I've been trying to manifest things. I've been trying to understand the laws of the universe, the divine truths of the world, the divine love that's offered to us. And through humility too.
Yeah.
And when you got to, and here's another thing, I got to be careful what I ask for too, because, you know, the divine will show me the truths. And now that we're here, right, and we're in this unique time and space, that it's never been lived before on this planet. So I look at it as kind of a very exciting time to be alive, because we really do have a unique opportunity to tap into the universal laws of what's really going on around here, with our own free will. We got to choose to want to know. We got to choose to want to seek divine love. We have to want to choose to seek the divine truths. We have to want to seek humility in all things. And if you're in that space, you know, you'll get synchronicities. And that's what I do with my clients now. It's like, I've had clients come to me that never meditated before. They didn't really have any connection to anything. And now they're meditating, and they're asking me what I think their dreams mean, or something like that. And they're discovering that they do have the power to create their own business, to create their own ripple effect in life.
Yes.
And it was really through my son's experience in this life that I realized that, you know, I didn't do anything special with him, right? All we do is have open, honest conversations.
Yeah.
All we do is like, if he's in a bad mood, I'm like, yo, bro, why are you in a bad mood? Or if I'm in a bad mood and I'm crying, like last night I was crying. My son's like, what's wrong, mom? And I got to tell him how I'm feeling instead of shutting down, and that's how you get to be a good parent. You don't
Yeah.
hide anything from your kids. You're not trying to put on a facade of everything's perfect, everything's fine, everything's wonderful. It's okay to
Yes.
talk to your kid about like things that are going on inside and things that are happening and the truths that you're learning as an adult, right? Like, hey, come, like I had my son try hape one time, like plant medicine, right? Come try this. And he's like, whoa, like, because I'm not afraid. And as I'm learning, I try to teach him. I try not to push it on him. That's another thing too.
Yes.
Like he's on his own journey, and us as parents take too much ownership of children. That's my kid.
Yeah, that's my kid.
You need to do this. You need to do that.
Yes.
Go do this because I said so. And it doesn't work. I allow, of course I have bounds for my son, but he's living his own life. I'm just a guide. And if I think about it from a much higher level, I'm his older sister in the spirit world.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's just this little
Yes.
that's teaching me lessons if I'm willing to learn, because kids will trigger us. Kids are
Oh,
meant
yeah.
to trigger us
Oh,
because
yeah.
kids represent all of the emotional wounds that we haven't healed yet.
Yes.
They do. And my son is he's a boy, right? And I've had all this trauma with men. So here I am raising this young man. I've never tried to understand the masculine. I've never tried to understand a man's journey. I've never tried to understand the pressures that young boys have. I never have. I just judged it until I had my own son. And then especially as he's getting older, it's like I'm hearing him like, Mom, you don't know what it feels like. And I'm like, this is it. And I'm like, wow, how powerful are you? Like he's this, how beautiful is this young man, right? To be able to have tough conversations with his friends or not be afraid to speak up to the teacher. It's about like empowering. That's why I teach empowerment. It's like empowering others to make decisions for themselves. You can tell people, hey, this is what I see. And then based on their triggers alone, you'll know if you hit a point or not.
Oh, yeah.
But as long as I'm staying true to myself and the other person is doing their best to stay true to themselves, we're not here to judge each other's journey. We're not here to say, you should do this, you should do that, you should do this, you should do that, you should read this. Religion has it all wrong. Everybody thinks that they've got this God thing down, and there is no God in church. My experience with the divine is nothing like church. Not saying that there's not sacred information out there. What I'm saying is when you go into a spot in a building and you're sitting there waiting for the man that's standing at the podium to tell you the truth, you're not doing your own investigative reporting in your own life.
Yes.
You're not trying to sit alone with your emotional damages and emotional wounds and trying to heal yourself with the divine alone. Not saying that church is bad if you want to go refresh yourself or whatever, like that's what people can do. What I'm saying is I have not found the God that I've found in churches.
Yeah.
When I was a young girl, this is why I wear crop tops. This is why I'll tell you why I wear crop tops. Like I wear them all the time because not only have I worked really hard on my body, but also it's like that rebellious nature, because that little girl, when I was in middle school, she couldn't wear crop tops. She got judged for everything she was wearing because she was making all the adult men uncomfortable. But that was their problem, and so I got judged all the time. I got almost kicked out of the youth group for what I was wearing, and that's not God. That's not love. That's judgment. That's fear. And God doesn't live there at all. We're not here to tell, we're not here to do that. We're here to watch each other grow.
Yes.
It's possible because of these recovery groups that I was in. Like how are these people from all different walks of life? You're talking like criminals, people who've been in prison, people who've been in jail. I used to go into a halfway house here in Vegas. I used to go into a halfway house here with these men that were going to prison or coming from. And I would just go there with my little girl self and tell my story. And they'd be like, wow, this chick actually knows what she's talking about. She's not like just thing that she's been handed everything, because that's what I look like. I look like I've been handed everything my whole life, and that's just not the case. And so like going into this room with all this group of dudes that have all these problems, they're in a unique gift of desperation and willingness to learn about themselves. Yes. However, they all have this same commonality. Like, I want to get better.
Right.
I want to talk about my problem, and maybe it'll help myself and maybe the next guy too.
Yes.
And that's really what we're supposed to be doing on this planet. And that's what I do my best to empower others to do, in multiple different facets, you know. It's like this spiritual journey is like always growing. And I've tried to define myself, like what I'm, it's hard to like call what I do something. So I just called myself like a self-love embodiment coach. I can help people with health and wealth in their relationships. But even then, I don't even feel like that's deep enough. It's almost like even like right before I got on this podcast too, it's like I'm getting these realizations that I'm actually supposed to be helping the masculine. I have a profound effect on men. I always have. No matter where I go, I've always had a profound effect on men. And it's because of my direct approach. It's because of the way I communicate. And it's probably, you know, and it helps to draw men because I'm attractive. So I think that, you know, the divine uses people, like molds them into what their mission is, right? And so now I'm kind of like in this kind of in the meantime, in between time stage. I created this breath work for children probably 6 months ago because, like 6 months ago, because, you know, because of everything that I experienced. I can't even imagine if I just had a little bit of tools.
Yes.
Like the breath, for instance, to calm down, to breathe, to be educated, that my mom and dad aren't to be idolized. Like that's how, you know, little kids are like, oh, my mom and dad. And it's like, oh, I want mommy and daddy's love all the time. And it's like, if they're giving it to you in the ways that you need, sure. But what happens when we empower these children and teach them the breath and teach them how to calm down in the midst of traumatic moments?
Yeah.
And what kind of impact can that have? Because children are sponges. I'm over here talking to adults that I can't even like get to start meditating for a whole month. But if I talk to a child and I talk about these magical superpowers they can get, and I talk about their breath, and I talk about, you know, all these different aspects, it's so that's kind of where like I dialed in, and started doing workshops for that. I do create workshops all across the city about various different topics because we all have different things we're going through, and I want to be able to attract in, because my entire life experience has so many different, it's so versatile, that like I can relate to anybody, you know. Even being in a lesbian relationship, I can relate to those people who have been condemned for being who they are. It's just pretty crazy. And the thing is that the one thing that is the most important thing that I had to always remember is don't give up. Like I have no choice but to persevere. It's almost like, I have the free will to choose, but it's almost like I don't have a choice anymore, because I can't sit still and be like, oh, okay, I'm just going to go leave all this and I'm going to go work a job where I can make millions of dollars and at least I'll have security. It's like, that doesn't even resonate with me anymore.
Yeah.
Like I would rather live the way that I'm living and trust the divine to bring me financial income than rely on the outside world. It's like the outside world has been so disappointing. And I just want to empower people to make their own decisions and be able to be comfortable with those decisions and know that it's okay to always feel a certain kind of way. And we don't need to feel shame around our emotional damages. We get to take ownership and responsibility to help heal those so they don't have power over us anymore.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love your story.
Wow. It's already been 8 minutes.
We just
scratched the surface of the story.
Yeah, you just went all in. It was awesome. I relate to so much into your story, like addiction. It's always like you heal one and then you realize you have so many more under that until you get to the root cause of like all of that. And oh yeah, I
And the
love the
root, like,
way, yeah.
honestly, the root causes for, we can, they're just always layers.
Yes.
But the layers always come back to my parents. The
Yes.
layers always come back to how I was raised, what I was conditioned to believe. And it's about unlearning those beliefs. And
Exactly.
really as simple as that, even though it's quite painful at times.
I
Um,
know.
and people have a hard time standing up against mom and dad. People,
Yes.
for the longest time, I didn't even post on my Facebook about any of this because I was afraid of, and it did happen, right? I was afraid of their reaction, and I don't talk to now they don't talk to me at all. But when my mother does want to talk to me, she sends me a text like, "You've lost your way. I miss the little girl that used to love me." It's like, what are you talking about, lady? But it's funny because it doesn't anger me anymore, and that's where I get to see my healing, right? How much work I've
Hmm.
done for myself, and how much I can celebrate. Like, it actually doesn't make me angry. It actually makes me have compassion for her, because how
Right.
lost, how lost do you have to be to want to rely on your emotional healing through your children, um,
Yes.
or put your emotional burdens on your children. It's
Yeah,
just,
and like how powerful you are as a parent. Like I feel I have like three daughters, well, two daughter and one stepdaughter, and the way I parent, the more I heal myself, the way I parent them, it's just so empowering even for them, to not be the parent that restrict them into like a box. You got to be that, you got to do this, and that's why we unschool. That's the choice we made, because that's what it was, the thing that was the most aligned with who my kids were and who I am. And so not to rely on any like governmental
yeah,
institution for education, and to let them express who they are, how they want to express themselves. Like, you want to dress in a way, dress in a way, and like people are gonna look at you,
yep,
just own the fuck out of it, like it doesn't matter what people think, what people, they're gonna see something out of you for sure. You want to be shy about it, that's on you, that's not on them. And so like to just like be able to empower them through breath. I do that as well with my kid. We do breath work like every other day, because it's just so grounding for them to be able to rely on themselves. Like, you cannot be more with yourself than when you're with your breath, right?
yeah.
Like, this is the one thing you can actually control,
Yeah, and like the thing is too is like, I like how you just said that, we made the decision to be in Earth School, and we really did. And because our children are extensions of us, as we're
Yes.
healing, they are changing because they
Yes.
no longer reflect the emotional damage that we have. They no longer, there's certain burdens that can be lifted off them. They don't have to make the same decision, right?
Yeah.
I think my son has seen addiction, and like is like, he even has like a whole tapestry in his room called, and it says "Frick Vape" because he's not totally against nicotine too. And
Yeah.
it's like, and I love that. I love how he's so bold and he's able to speak up. I love when he tells me how he's really feeling, or like I was calling him baby all the time. I was like, "Okay, baby, come over here, blah blah," because he's my baby. And now
Right.
he's 13. And I had an honest conversation with him because I'm not afraid to have an honest conversation with him. I'm like,
Yes.
"Okay, so do you like it when I call you baby?" He said no. And I was like, I'm like, "What do you want me to call you?" And he's like, "Well, you can call me by my name." um, he's like, or you can call me son. I like when you call me son. But
Nice.
it's because that open, like even something as simple as
Yes.
that, an open dialogue with your child. What do you like to be called?
Yes.
I'm not going to sit here and continually call you what you don't want to be called. And now I'm like still working on it, right? Sometimes it'll slip and I'm like, "Okay, babe, I mean, son." And he'll start laughing. I'm working on it because I genuinely
Yes.
want to call him. And it's like, these are little beings, we're not just here to say like, "You're going to do this, you're going to do that, you're going to do this, you're going to do that." It's like getting them comfortable with developing themselves and getting them
Yes.
comfortable with like, yeah, it's just it is a beautiful process, but
It is.
us as parents have to be willing to take the ego hit, if you will,
Yes.
because when you're not in that space of Earth School, it can feel like my kid doesn't love me. That's, my parents were very good at that. Like when you
Yes.
behave in the manner in which they believe you should, it's like the love gets taken away. And I don't want my son
Yes.
to feel like the love is ever taken away. We've
Exactly.
had some pretty deep conversations about some things that young boys go through. And is that comfortable for him? No, because I'm mom. But are
Yes.
we going to have him anyway? Yeah, because who else going to do it, dude?
Exactly.
Who else?
Exactly. Yes, yes, it's the same for me too. Like my father always felt like a victim, like like he's always like trying to push an agenda on my kids, and I'm like, dude, just like chill, like they're not going into the school system. Just deal with it, mourn it, grieve it, do whatever you got to do with it. Like they're not going because they don't want to. Like I'm not forcing anything on them, and so like and then after that he acts like a victim, like I'm not like letting him and I'm like, this is your story, like, and every time I'm just like trying to give him back his own responsibility on the matter, he's like always playing the victim, always playing like, oh, it's not my fault, you're rejecting me, and I'm like, well, like I'm not your parent, like if like you're fucking like 65, like just deal with it, right? But
Isn't that so
thank
freeing?
you for telling me, like,
Yeah.
how am I not like to be able to heal myself from, because when I was younger this was painful for me, like to always feel like out of place, like didn't have a voice, couldn't be able to speak anything, I couldn't tell nothing. It was like awful, but by now, like by me healing that and giving back to my kids, like they own their voice. Sometimes it's even like confronting, like they're gonna tell you the truth no
Yeah.
matter what,
Yeah.
and to accept that they are like, I feel like I feel the same. Like I'm a guide. Like I've always said that. Like I'm a guide. I'm not like, you can call me mama if you want. Like I feel okay with that. But like I'm not gonna be your teacher, even though like we're unschooling. Like I'm not their teacher at all. Like fuck that. I'm not a teacher. Point. Like I'm not their teacher. I'm not like, but I'm their guide though. Like if they got something that's coming up, of course I'm going to be there. I'm going to be the first one in line to be there to help them heal, to go through it. And by empowering them, like they're going to make the right choice. It doesn't matter if like what path they're choosing. If you're empowering your kids, they're going to make the choice that is aligned with them, and that's how powerful like the next generation is going to be.
Yeah, and I love how you said that too. Like my son's not afraid to speak up either. And over here it's comfortable and that's how we live our life. But when he goes and he visits his father and his father's family,
Yeah.
I'm seeing the impact that he's making just by him speaking his truth. Like, why are you drinking so much, Papa? Or like just like these questions that he's willing to ask, that he's not
Yes.
afraid to. And it's very bold. It's very bold. It's very brave. And we get to support these little beings because they are the promise, right? Like
Yes.
we are in the earth school. We're doing the shit work. So that way
Yes.
they can, develop. That's why I think millennials are a lot more entrepreneurial, because like
Yes.
that's where the shift happened. And now
Right.
these kids, like the only reason, like I keep my son in school, but the only reason why I do is because he said he likes to develop relationships with other kids.
Yeah.
That's his choice. And I'm like, okay, well, anytime you say you don't want to get out, like you just let me know, we'll unplug. Like, and
Yeah.
it's a team. It's like a team. It's like,
Exactly.
it's working right now. It's working right now. If it doesn't work later, it might not work later. We don't know what's gonna.
Yes.
I don't know if my son's supposed to be involved in the public school system because he's supposed to challenge the public school system, because
Maybe, yes.
he makes teachers very uncomfortable for some reason for being a 13-year-old boy. He just walks around and he's himself and he's happy-go-lucky, and he's got teachers telling him like, oh, you're Mr. Wise Guy, when he doesn't even know the teacher, right? And he's like, wow, that's me. Like he's very calm and he like just calls it out and like keeps walking. And I appreciate him and I appreciate his journey. And we do our best as parents, and we do. I think that like for me, I can get down on myself a little bit because like I can see where, you know, because I was drinking when he was younger, right? So I can get down on myself for the decisions I made on the past. However, it's about the shift. It's about the change. It's about the being willing to see things as they are, and teaching our kids like, hey, remember when I was doing this? Like not being willing to admit our faults. Like,
Yes.
okay, yeah, I got kind of angry and I shouldn't have said that, you know. And I mean, what parents doing that? You know, like there's
Yes.
no parents that are willing to. I mean, now there's a lot of like,
They're more and more every day.
oh
Thank
yeah, yeah,
God.
thank God, yeah. But like I always say, my mother has been my best teacher. She taught me exactly how to
Yes.
be a mother because I did everything the opposite that she did, and it's turned out
Yes.
pretty well.
Yeah. And if I recall correctly from my story, I think my father and my mother were trying to do something the opposite of what they were given, like as parent, right? And
Wow.
so even though like they weren't like they were the best parent they could be, and it wasn't like aligned with me and some of my siblings, um, it doesn't matter because it's just the path, you know, like and we're gonna do what we're gonna do, and our kids are gonna do what they're gonna do, you know, like and that's how we evolve. But just by being in a conscious state of mind of like this is happening, I feel like this is much more empowering than like if I recall my grandparents' story that are so much like into Catholic school, Catholic church, and all of that. They have no power. It's always like somebody else that's like it's never their fault. It's always like something else. And my parents are the same. And for me, the shift was to take responsibility for who I am, what I bring into the world, how I behave, what I attract in my own life, and how I raise my kids into that awareness of who you are. And now like they're gonna do their path and with that, and they're gonna push it further, you know. And it's not like my father feel like it's against him or something, but this is not against anyone. It's just the way it is, right? So when my kids are going to grow up and going to do like something opposite of like what I'm doing, but like it's not quite the opposite. They're just like pushing it further. They're just going to push it further. And so like I can just understand that and like have empathy for the path they're going into. They're the first one that's gonna walk this path, right? And
Yeah.
so yeah, so it's all like a matter of perspective and like the shift
Yeah,
in.
and I like how you said that too, because you know that is the thing in religion. You go to church and you admit things, and you're like, oh, I feel bad about this. Oh, forgive me for this, right? But we're
Right.
coming from an intellectual standpoint. It is not being felt in the heart space, because when you truly feel what you have done in your heart space, you don't repeat it again. You
Yes.
don't, you really, you're like, you have a hard time, like drinking alcohol. I mean, I was 24 years old when I quit drinking, and I was only 24 years old, and I saw the damages that I've done to myself and others in 10 years time. I can't even imagine if I were to try to drink again. And I'm not willing to take that chance because I truly am sorry. I
Yes.
truly want to live in a space. I have a living amends to make to my son. You know, like, I'm sorry I was drinking for the first 3 years of your life, but you know what? I'm not going to do it again. But if I pick
Yeah.
up alcohol again, am I really sorry? No. And the same thing goes for behaviors, right? Oh, I'm sorry I
Yes.
treated you that way. I didn't mean for it to come off that way. And then a week later, you're still doing the same thing. It's like, do you even really feel what happened, and are you truly sorry? And that's the problem with the repentance thing in Catholic Church specifically too, but also Christianity. It's like, oh, I'm forgiven and everything's white as snow. And it's like, no, when you go to church and you want to give your life to the Creator, that's where your journey starts. Then you got to
Yes.
really see everything that you've done and be willing to take ownership and accountability, not just for your past, but every time something happens. You know,
Yeah.
like I'm not a perfect person, but I'll be the first one to tell you that. Like, if I'm wrong, I'm gonna say I'm wrong. If I was an
Yeah.
asshole, I'm gonna be like, "Yo, I was totally offline there." Like, trigger, you know, and I'm willing to take ownership of that because that is what it is. That is the truth.
Yes.
So it's
Yes. And
about
no one is perfect. Like we're all like walking this road. Like we're all like on this this path, you know? Like
yeah,
no one is perfect. And even though like we say we're perfect the way we are, it's like it's more of like accepting where we are right now, but like pushing
Yeah.
through it and like moving forward, but like not in a perfect, you're not perfect. Like, I mean,
Right.
if you do mistakes, I like, it's like, yeah, you're not perfect in that sense, you know, but you're, yeah, you can accept the way that you are and just accept that you have to move through it and push further and yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Ah,
I think
thanks.
I think honestly we make a pretty great team. What do you
I
think?
think so. Yes, I
I'm
think
gonna
so. Yes.
work.
Yeah, I really love to yeah, talk with you. It was
There's a lot of topics we could talk about, so invite me anytime.
yes. Yes, I would love to invite you again. Like man, I love this podcast so much.
Yeah.
I'm having so much fun. I'm meeting all kinds of cool
Awesome.
people. And yeah, I would love to work with you more. I know you're like, I would like to go deeper into like what you do with the breath work and like, you know, the
Yeah.
sexual trauma. This is a theme that speaks to me deeply too. Like, I would love to explore that with you maybe on another episode.
Yeah, the definition of healthy sexuality is definitely a message that I'm
Yes.
to expressing as well. You know, I teach group fitness classes at another gym here.
Yeah.
One of those classes is called Down and Dirty, and
I love that.
the premise of the class is to do like it's in a hot room, and so there's weight training with like kettlebells and it's like a boot camp style, but in between the reps or the sets that we're doing, you know, we do like sexy dance moves in between. And I start, you know, the class can be, you know, kind of negatively seen, but I start the class with healing your sacral chakra
Yes.
because there's a lot of shame around sexuality and healthy sexuality because of the experiences the earth has had with sexuality in general, because of
Yes.
what humans have done to sex to make it absolutely profane instead of embracing the beauty of it. It's pretty crazy when you dial in your sexuality and you truly understand. You know, there's a lot of creativity that can come with it. But everybody, the society right now, sexualizes everything.
Yes.
So you know, talking about sexuality in a spiritual way. But I didn't, you know, I only learned that by the severe traumas that I'd gone through and
Yes.
healing through. You know,
Yes.
it's always a process to heal, but I'm willing to talk to you about that too. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna send you a link and we're gonna have another appointment to talk about that for sure. Yes, for sure. Would love that. Cool. All right. So how people can reach out to you because I know that they're gonna want to reach out to you for sure.
My main platform I like communication on is Instagram.
Okay.
It is Gypsy Faye 22. So the word gypsy and the word Faye is spelled FAE and then the number 22. Because I, in fact, am a traveling gypsy and a total fairy. I embody fairy energy for sure. I like to think of myself as dropping pixie dust off at random places, and I might trigger people on accident, but it's meant to help develop their soul because whether people know it or not, everybody is going through an awakening on this planet. And depending on how willing you are to go through it will depend on the severity of your lessons. So, yeah.
I love that. All right.